Iran has now fired ballistic missiles at NATO's nuclear weapons storage site 3 times. 3 times. Not once, not twice. 3 separate confirmed ballistic missile launches at a single NATO base in 14 days, and 3 times, NATO air defenses shot them down. The third happened this morning. At 3:25 in the morning local time, sirens wailed across Incirlik Air Base in southern Turkey. Red alert. Residents in the city of Adana, 10 kilometers away, were woken from their sleep by 5 minutes of continuous alarm. Social media filled immediately with footage of a glowing object moving through the night sky above the base. Turkey's defense ministry confirmed it within hours. A ballistic missile launched from Iran, entering Turkish airspace, was neutralized by NATO air and missile defense assets, the third interception in 5 days. NATO has not released a public statement. Here is what Incirlik Air Base actually is, because the coverage has described it as a key NATO facility and left it there. That description is accurate and completely insufficient. Incirlik is the largest United States nuclear weapons storage site in Europe. According to the Federation of American Scientists and the Arms Control Association, it currently stores between 20 and 50 American B61-12 nuclear gravity bombs, variable yield weapons, the most advanced tactical nuclear device in the U.S. arsenal, held in hardened underground vaults inside 21 aircraft shelters under U.S. custody, protected by permissive action link codes that prevent unauthorized use. Iran has fired ballistic missiles at that location 3 times in 14 days. Every single one was intercepted. But intercepted is not the same as impossible to hit. And the sequence of 3 attempts in 14 days is not random targeting. It is a pattern. And patterns, in military analysis, are doctrine. To understand what Iran is doing and why it matters far beyond Turkey, you need to understand what changed between the first missile on March 4th and the third missile this morning. The first Iranian ballistic missile entered Turkish airspace on March 4th. It was intercepted by a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer using a Standard Missile-3 over Hatay province on Turkey's Mediterranean coast. Debris fell in open fields. No casualties. Turkey summoned the Iranian ambassador and issued a warning. Iran denied involvement. The second missile came 5 days later on March 9th. It was shot down over Gaziantep, a Turkish city of 2 million people, 200 kilometers northeast of Hatay. Further inland, closer to Incirlik, debris fell in empty fields in Gaziantep province, which sits roughly between Incirlik to the southwest and the NATO radar base at Chronology to the northeast. 2 potential targets, 1 missile, both within the debris radius. Turkey issued a stronger statement. President Erdogan's communications director said Ankara was strongly reiterating its warning to all parties to avoid steps that endanger civilians. The United States raised its travel warning for southeastern Turkey to do not travel, the highest risk level. The U.S. State Department ordered non-essential staff to evacuate the consulate in Adana, the city that sits 10 kilometers from Incirlik's perimeter. A Patriot missile defense battery was deployed to Malatya province, home of the Chronology NATO radar installation. And then this morning, the third missile. This is where the analysis becomes more complex, because these are not accidents. They are not misfires aimed at Iraq or Syria that drifted into Turkish airspace. The trajectory of the second missile, confirmed by Turkish defense analysis, was assessed as directed toward Turkish territory, not merely passing through it. And U.S. intelligence has reportedly concluded that one or both of the first 2 missiles were aimed at Incirlik specifically. Iran is not at war with Turkey. Tehran has said this repeatedly. But Iran is firing ballistic missiles at a NATO base that stores American nuclear weapons, 3 times in 14 days, and claiming each time it was not intentional. Here is the constraint this creates that no one in public commentary is yet fully mapping. Incirlik's nuclear weapons cannot defend themselves. The B61-12 bombs in those underground vaults require aircraft to deliver them. Not aircraft based at Incirlik, the base does not permanently station nuclear-capable fighters. In the event NATO authorized their use, U.S. or Allied aircraft would have to fly in to retrieve them. If those aircraft cannot reach Incirlik because Iranian missiles are targeting the base, and if NATO's air defense magazine depth is being tested by repeated intercept requirements, the weapons in those vaults move from strategic asset to strategic liability. They become the thing you must protect rather than the thing that protects you. The Federation of American Scientists has raised this exact concern for years. Their 2019 assessment described the weapons as essentially Erdogan's hostages in a political crisis. The current situation is structurally different and strategically more acute. These weapons are not being held hostage by political friction. They're being targeted by ballistic missiles in an active war. This is a point that rarely gets enough attention. NATO's nuclear sharing arrangement was designed for Cold War deterrence against the Soviet Union. It was never stress-tested against a scenario in which a non-nuclear regional power fires repeated ballistic missiles directly at the storage site. The doctrine assumes the weapon's presence deters attack. Iran is testing whether deterrence actually holds when you fire at the base anyway. 3 missiles, 3 interceptions. The deterrence is currently holding, but it is holding by the margin of 3 successful intercepts, not by strategic calculation. Turkey's position is the most immediately consequential variable in this trajectory. Ankara has been the most careful NATO member in this conflict. Turkey condemned both the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran and Iran's retaliatory attacks. It declared its territory and airspace were not being used to attack Iran, which Washington confirmed regarding Incirlik. Turkey positioned itself as a potential mediator, hosting diplomatic contacts, keeping channels open with Tehran. That posture was sustainable as long as Iranian missiles were not entering Turkish airspace. That posture is no longer sustainable. 3 Iranian ballistic missiles have now breached Turkish airspace. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said this week, alongside his German counterpart in Ankara, that Turkey is experiencing the most intense moments of the war in the last few days. Turkey has invoked its right to retaliate. It has not done so. But the domestic political pressure on Erdogan to respond is accumulating with every missile. And Turkey's response options include something that no other NATO member currently has on the table. Turkey borders Iran directly. It hosts the Kurachik radar facility that provides NATO with early warning of Iranian missile launches. It controls the Bosphorus Strait, through which Russian naval vessels must transit to reach the Mediterranean, and it is now a confirmed target of Iranian ballistic missile attacks. If Turkey moves from neutral party to active co-belligerent, the geographic and institutional scope of this conflict expands in a direction that transforms it from a U.S.-Israeli operation against Iran into a NATO-Iran confrontation. That transformation triggers Article 5, considerations that every alliance member must then respond to. Germany, France, Poland, the United Kingdom, countries that have publicly criticized the operation, would face a collective defense obligation against the country they have been urging restraint toward. Iran may understand this. The missiles aimed at Incirlik may be designed precisely to create that dilemma, force Turkey to choose between absorbing continued attacks and triggering a NATO escalation that expands the conflict beyond what any party currently wants. The pressure is on Ankara, not on Washington or Tel Aviv. The nuclear dimension adds a layer that defies normal escalation analysis. The B61-12 bombs at Incirlik are not going to detonate if a missile hits the base. The Federation of American Scientists confirmed the weapons are designed to survive conventional attack without triggering a nuclear explosion. But a successful strike on Incirlik Air Base, even a conventional one that destroys aircraft, infrastructure, or personnel, would cross a threshold that the entire post-Cold War international security architecture was built to prevent. An attack on a NATO nuclear weapons storage facility by a non-nuclear state in an active war. There is no established protocol for that scenario, no precedent, no playbook, which is exactly why the 3 missiles so far have been intercepted, and why the decision to fire them regardless carries a strategic message that transcends their military effect. Iran is demonstrating willingness to try. The trying is the message. 3 indicators to watch in the coming days. Whether Turkey formally invokes NATO Article 4 consultations, which requires the alliance to meet and assess whether Turkey's security is threatened. Turkey signaled awareness of this option earlier in the conflict, but has not triggered it. A 4th missile may change that calculation. Whether NATO publicly acknowledges that Incirlik was the intended target of any of the 3 interceptions. NATO has confirmed intercepts. It has not confirmed targeting intent. That distinction is diplomatically significant, and closing it would mark an escalation in how the alliance characterizes the conflict, and whether the United States begins emergency procedures to relocate the B61-12 weapons from Incirlik. Such a movement would require C-17 transport aircraft, armored security convoys, and coordinated Allied logistics. It would be detectable by satellite imagery within hours of beginning. If it begins, it signals that the U.S. government has assessed that 3 near misses are close enough to constitute an unacceptable nuclear security risk. Iran has fired ballistic missiles at NATO's nuclear weapons 3 times. NATO has intercepted all 3. The 4th has not been fired yet. But the pattern is not random. The pattern is a test. And what gets tested in the logic of this conflict eventually gets answered. Watch Incirlik.